Hello?
Hello, Sydney. Do you like scary movies? Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th? How about Survivor? Would you like to be the sole survivor, Sydney?
I'm scared.
Final question. Are you ready? What door am I at? Boo! Whoa! Boo! Where'd you come from? Why are you holding that mask? Ghost faces and goblins. Internet. My name is Peridiam, and welcome to the scariest and most disturbing moments in Survivor. Also, happy Halloween. Survivor is unscripted TV at its finest, and because it's not scripted, you can get moments like this, where real blood is pouring down someone's face, all because they bumped into a branch in the dark. Don't worry, he didn't make it.
I think I have a small scratch.
I'm kidding, it's a few stitches. Glass slicing into people's bodies, teeth being removed, giant objects impaling your head, or machetes hitting fingers or faces over and over and over. If there was ever a video to highlight why Survivor is very real and sometimes extremely dangerous, let it be this one. And there's perhaps nothing more disturbing than a dead body. In a 1-minute scene on Season 4 Marquesas, in Episode 7, right before the merge, Nalia, Pascal, and Kathy come across some skeletal remains of a human. They're entirely mystified, and from what I've heard, the Marquesan government had the producers and players leave the beach and film elsewhere right after it was reported. I think one of the reasons why the merge beach is at the Rotu camp, despite it not having as much food, it wasn't as bountiful, is because of this.
It's a skull of a man.
Oh, that's definitely a skull.
What is that? Is that the eyeballs?
Yeah, this is the eye sockets right here.
Oh.
And it's obvious it had some blunt trauma to the head. And there's just a fracture all the way across here.
When the players ventured to Africa in Season 3, they all had to live in a protective boma of thorny bushes and branches that they built themselves. The reason was because the wildlife wasn't under any contract not to eat them, which meant the players had to keep a steady watch on the fire all throughout the night, always having at least 2 players awake at any given time. There are actually locals posted with guns to protect the players should the lions or hippos turn on them. One of the most hardcore seasons of the show.
We could hear it actually breathe. We heard its wheeze as it inhaled. It was kind of like a...
It made my blood run cold. We went into this thing knowing, yeah, it's going to be tough, it's going to be real, but I don't think any of us really considered that it was going to be quite that real.
That was real.
It's still real.
This is probably gonna happen every night.
And speaking of hardcore, another one of the scariest moments for me is in the first episode of Season 11, Guatemala, when the first challenge is introduced as a grueling 11-mile hike through the jungles of Guatemala in a foot race. The reward for winning this challenge was being able to set up your camp at the local ruins away from the crocodiles, while the losers of the race would have to keep trekking to a lesser camp without flint. Along the way, several of the men suffered from exhaustion. Blake had a thorny bramble tree fall on him, hitting his shoulder, that caused him to vomit. Bobby John was nearly evacuated from dehydration. And Jim would later go on to tear his bicep that caused him to get voted out first.
Oh, that's got thorns in it.
Oh, no.
He's got thorns in his shoulders. We've got 2 in here.
Get your teeth, Margaret. Get after, girl.
Hold on. Bobby John. Bobby John.
Huh?
Oh, his eyes are rolling back. Bobby John. Bobby John. We didn't expect the guys to go down so quickly. Don't get up. Lay down. Stay down.
Now, I don't know about you, but one of my biggest fears as a child was having a spider crawl into my mouth when I was asleep. In fact, as a man-child, that is still one of my biggest fears. So imagine my displeasure when in the first episode of Season 32, Ko Wrong, a bug crawls into Jenny's ear and burrows in deep enough to the point where, as she would describe it, it was so painful, it felt like the bug was crawling on her brain. She stayed up all night in pain. Her ear started bleeding. She even gave a confessional with the bug in her ear. But thankfully, it eventually crawled out and she was fine again.
It's just disgusting hearing these little legs crawl around in your head. Like it's digging deeper into my ear canal. I don't know what that does to a person.
All night, I haven't slept like not even a minute.
You okay?
Like he'll go for 30 seconds and he'll stop for a minute and then he starts getting I can hear him. Ah! That's what it sounds like.
There it is. There it is. I'm gonna get it as soon as it gets out of here. I'm not gonna make it worse.
Does it feel better? I feel like myself again, seriously.
Personal tangent. I've been in a tornado. I drove through one about a month ago in my hometown while buying cat food. I saw roofs being removed from houses, trees being torn out of the ground and flying in the air, and I was driving in my car through all of it. The scariest moment of my life. It was terrifying. So in season 33, Millennials vs. Generation X had a cyclone hit their beach. I now can sympathize. On day 2 of the season, the cast were initially given a tarp to help build their shelter. And Survivor usually doesn't give the players these things, so that was pretty surprising. But a few hours later, Jeff Probst got warning that the storm that they were monitoring had intensified, and so he traveled to both camps and evacuated both tribes to a safe location to weather out the weather. The players weren't allowed to talk to each other, and they stayed overnight and were brought back to their destroyed camps the next day, although at that point it was probably more of an upgrade.
Man, you know it's bad when Jeff gives you a tarp. Like, you don't even have to win the tarp. It just comes in the tree mail. So, and that's when we also knew, like, the weather's gonna get worse, so we got a lot of work to do.
It's hard, though, because the rain never lets up. And last night was, like, one of the hardest nights of my life. So, I don't understand how it could get much worse than that.
That tropical storm that I told you about yesterday is growing in intensity. It's been upgraded again. It's a cyclone.
Oh my God.
So, for the first time in 33 seasons of Survivor, we are going to evacuate.
Oh my God. Oh my.
But by far, the scariest moments on Survivor are from the medical evacuations that I have conveniently ignored in this video up until now. Because getting injured on Survivor is pretty commonplace. You see players with cuts and bruises and really bad bug bites all the time. Rupert, the tie-dye pirate, broke his toe in the first episode of season 20, Heroes vs. Villains, and like a minute later, Stephanie LaGrossa dislocated her shoulder. We saw Lauren O'Connell in season 38, Edge of Extinction, pass out in the middle of a challenge, only to then see Ethan Zahn 2 seasons later in Winners at War collapse on the actual Edge of Extinction while performing a task to transport logs up and down a mountainside. These were no jokes, but thankfully all of these players were able to get back up on their feet and trek on.
I wanted to set a good example for like everyone who's been through a health challenge and thinks they can't do it anymore. Like, you can do it. You can get through those hard moments.
But for some, that's not always the case. As of present day, there have been 16 medical evacuations from 10 different seasons. From earliest season 2, the Australian outback, with Mike Scoopin falling into a fire hands first, where his flesh was melting off of his hands and he had to be flown out of camp via helicopter. All the way to season 37, David vs. Goliath, only a few years ago, where Pat Cusack injured his back due to rough waves on a boat trip to return from the first challenge. To put it mildly, we have seen a lot of rough go-arounds for these players. Jonathan Penner punctured his knee, James Clement had his finger infected, Joe Dowdle suffered a leg infection, Neil Gottlieb suffered multiple staph infections, don't Google that, and Shamar Thomas had to be removed from the game after he got a grain of sand in his eye, which could have cost him his eyesight. Even the sand beneath your feet is out to get you. Bruce on season 12 and Joe on season 32 ate too much food and couldn't poop and were evacuated for severe constipation. Even when you win, you lose. One of the most unusual evacuations came after Terry Dietz on season 31 had to leave the game after he found out that his son was hospitalized and had to undergo 2 open heart surgeries for a successful heart transplant. A different kind of fright. This is one of my personal scariest. Because you're isolated from your loved ones, you never know what you're missing until you see Probst knocking on your shelter door. Courtney Moon on season 24 One World broke her wrist after falling awkwardly at a challenge requiring surgery, while Colton Colby would later on get pulled for what appeared to be appendicitis. On season 19 Samoa, Mike Barassi was removed for extremely low blood pressure and just being unable to even stand. The scariest evacuation at the time happened in that same season to Russell Swan, who suffered extreme dehydration and an even lower blood pressure than Mike's. Jeff Probst was mortified. Perhaps the scariest and most disturbing moment in Survivor was during season 32, Co Wrong, when Caleb Reynolds was evacuated right after a grueling challenge in the sun. He suffered a severe heat stroke. Meanwhile, 2 other players, Sydney and Debbie, in that same instant were also undergoing the same problem. Thankfully, they both recovered, but Caleb was flown out, and never before had the fourth wall in a Survivor episode been broken as much as it was here.
Who knew it could be this difficult to find 3 little bags in a pile of sand?
I think she's getting heat exhaustion. She only weighs 98 pounds.
How you feeling, Deb?
I'm having heat stroke.
All right, just take it easy.
Oh my God. Oh, good God.
Caleb, water?
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, he needs medical. Needs medical.
Take a look at Caleb, too.
You guys do what you have to do. Just do. Sydney, how you feeling? Sydney, you're gonna be fine. Don't you worry. You just take some nice deep breaths.
Sydney, you've got a whole medical team here, okay? Sydney, can you hear me? All right, you doing all right? Jason's taking really good care of you right now.
Sydney seems to be feeling better now. How are you feeling, Sydney?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, temperature's down. Temperature's back to normal.
Okay.
I think we need to keep an eye on her for a little while longer.
Okay. All right, everybody on the crew is essential personnel.
Caleb, you still with us?
Umbrellas, coolers, water. Find a spot to help.
End of a given second.
Thank you, sir.
Caleb, you know there's only 2 ways you leave this game other than being voted out, and that's quitting, which you clearly are not doing. This is as far as you're going to go. We've got to take care of you.
Thank you. Good Caleb. We love you. We love you.
No matter how you slice it, those are many of the scariest and most disturbing moments in Survivor. And that's not even the end of it. There are certainly more psychological and social disturbances to be added to this list, where players have broken down or caused harm to one another, but I'm going to leave those out of this video. I will get to them another day. And I don't know if I should say this, but I hope you all enjoyed the video. At the very least, happy Halloween. A huge thank you to my patrons for all your support, for applying the golden rule when you're tricking and treating. Don't forget to not pick up the phone when you don't recognize the number on your way out. And I will see you in the next one once I figure out why Matthew keeps sharpening his machete.
He sits and sharpens his machete for an hour at a time. Why does he need the machete so sharp? I think he's gonna kill us.
All right, once again, he is sharpening his machete.
That is creepy. It's creepy. It's creepy.